Okay, so I am Erin Becker, Director of the Cambridge Art Association, and thank you for coming to our April 21st virtual studio visit with Jessica Burko. And Jessica is going to, I'm going to exit my screen share, and Jessica's going to take this away.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's so great to see so many friends, and thank you so much for coming to my studio. I am going to treat this as if you were coming for open studios. So I'm going to start with you walking up the steps. My studio is on the 5th floor of a building in the South End on Wareham Street. And so if you walked up the steps, it would look like this, entering the space. So I am going to take you on a quick walk around of the space, and then we'll start talking about the work itself. And my plan is to show you the whole process of how I make this work. But since we're just walking around the space, I want to tell you a little bit about my studio and my studio building itself, because that's what a lot of people want to talk about when they first get here. So this is really one of, gosh, it might even be the last old warehouse studio building in Boston. It's owned by a private family who are huge supporters of the arts. They have kept rents low. They have kept the building here. And I've been here for about 15 years, and I feel very lucky to be here. So this is some of my most recent work that I've been experimenting with and building on. As you see, a lot of it involves drawers. And these drawers I have exclusively found on the street. They were abandoned. Some of them were in broken down dressers. And believe it or not, a lot of them were actually just sitting on the street without the dressers, which I don't entirely understand, because I don't know why somebody would throw out their drawers without the dresser, but it's good for me, so I'm not that concerned about their decision. I don't take drawers from dressers that someone could scoop up and use. But I do take drawers, as I said, that cannot be used, and I really only take drawers that are sort of a certain era. I'm a little picky. I don't take new, I don't take particle board. I take drawers that are generally, I'd estimate, from the 1940s through the 80s. And I do that for a few reasons, but namely because I really love the sense of history that the drawers have. And I like to imagine people who have used them, why they wound up on the street, sort of what their stories are. And sometimes that affects the images that I put in them, though largely the images that I've been capturing over the last few years have been about identity and trying to find a place in the world as a multifaceted person, as we all are. And what I love about the drawers is it automatically compartmentalizes the idea of image and portrait and self-portrait, and even the idea of body parts and different objects. So now I want to show you some work that I have on my work table. And I'm going to walk you through, sorry for the crookedness. I'm going to walk you through the process that I go through of making the work. So the first things I do is I actually sketch out. I think about imagery that I want, and then I sketch out really what I'm trying to capture before I capture it. I used to shoot exclusively film, and now I shoot exclusively iPhone. And the iPhone resolution has been fine for me because, as you can see, the images are black and white. I make them black and white with Photoshop, and I increase the contrast with Photoshop. That's the only photoshopping I do for the images. And then I print out the images as photocopies, just on regular old photocopy paper. And this becomes the negative for the image. This is as if I was taking it into a darkroom and printing an image, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So before I make the photocopy, I figure out which drawers I'm gonna use so that I know what size to make the image. And then I paint the inside of each drawer white, and I just use house paint. I'm very low tech. After the drawers are dry with the paint, I melt the encaustic beads in baking pans on my hot plate. And I use an all natural bristle house paint brush to put many, many coats on the surfaces. So this is not a drawer, obviously, but it's just to give you a sense of what the encaustic looks like. And then once the encaustic is in the drawers, actually we're gonna go over here to another group of images that I'm working on. So these are all very small objects that might be found in drawers, might be hidden, might be just little personal treasures. And I'm making them large. So here's a little sense of scale here. And that object was probably about this big, and then I blew it up. So as I mentioned, these Xeroxes become the negative. And what I mean by that is after the encaustic is in the drawer, I flatten it, I make it very flat. I'll take you back over here. I make it flat using a heat gun and also using this little tacking iron. And the reason I make it flat is because when I do the image transfers, they go on much more clearly the more flat the surface is. Also, encaustic is a bit toxic, so I have this giant respirator that I use. Unfortunately, I don't really have ventilation in my studio. I have these nice windows, and I open them and I put fans in them, blowing the air out. And ideally, the idea is with that, plus the ventilator, I'm good. So encaustic in here, negative photocopy, and the image transfer, the toner from the photocopy transfers into the encaustic using my highly advanced tool to burnish it. So I burnish, I push down hard, this takes a while, and then once it's completely burnished, I've got my bucket of water, my rag, and I use it to wet the entire back of the photocopy and essentially wash off the paper, and then what's left is just the image. Whoop, whoop. There it is. So then just the image is left after that paper washes off. So that's the process. Not sure what else I have to say right now, but I thought maybe we could open up for some discussion and some questions.
Yeah.
Would that be okay, Erin?
Yeah, so because everyone's on mute, because we found that's the best way to do this right now. We have 25 people on this visit. Any questions that you have for Jessica, if you want to type them into the chat box. If you are on a computer, you'll see the chat function in the bottom toolbar, and it'll appear on the right-hand side. And once we see your questions coming in, we'll unmute you and you can ask. So it's like Claudia has a question. I'm going to unmute you, Claudia.
Oh, hi, Jessica. I'd love to know about your process. So I was familiar with your work, and just my question is, and just because everybody's asking me the same question, are you producing or are you thinking about producing any new work in response to this pause?
Yes, thank you. Oh, I'm so glad you said that because I actually forgot to show you something. Thank you so much. So in just an effort to make more space on the tables, I actually moved this to the floor and then forgot about it. So months and months ago, I found these funny little house shape boxes at a Dollar Tree and got really excited about them. And I bought all of them. And then I drove to 2 other Dollar Trees and I bought all of them. So I have a big pile of these houses, and they've been sitting around for really months. And now with this whole experience of being confined and being in the house, and my family, just because of circumstances with school vacation, we've actually been in the house, we're in our 6th week, and the kids and I really don't leave. So everything's been in the house. And so then I've been thinking about these house-shaped boxes. And I'm starting to conceptualize what I'll be doing with them and photographing in our house to include in the boxes. So that is definitely coming. And I really appreciate you asking that question. Thank you.
Cool. So it looks like we have a question from Deb Peoples. I'm going to unmute you, Deb.
Okay, thanks. Hi, Jessica. I'm just wondering if you put a final layer of encaustic over your image or something to protect that and hold it into the surface after you burnish it in.
Great question. I generally don't. The toner, I find, isn't just on top of the encaustic, it's really embedded in there. And to scrape it off, which I have done in the past, takes a good amount of work because it's not just a little surface to scrape off. It's a good 1/4 inch to get all of the transfer out. I have on occasion, and I can show you an example over here, I have experimented with painting over it, but that's really just to create more of a surface texture. I don't know if you can see it in the picture, but here there's sort of a line of encaustic painted on top of part of the image, but it's not for any archival purpose. Encaustic is actually the most archival artist material. So it's, yeah.
Okay,
Does that answer?
Okay.
Thanks.
That's great.
Okay, let's see. We have a couple of like process related questions. So I'm going to have Stephanie Todd Hunter. When I find you on the alphabetical list, unmute you, and you can go ahead and ask.
Oh, I was just wondering, what the images you use, are they all ones that you've taken yourself, or do you ever find like vintage images online or anything?
You know, I've done that in past work, and I've done a lot of collage work in the past, but this is all original work. There's one image over here that kind of looks like that is what it might be. This one with the airplane, but sorry, I keep going crooked. The airplane is actually one of my children's toys. And again, that was one of the earlier images, and I photographed the toy, and I didn't Photoshop it with the arm. I actually transferred on 2 separate images next to each other. So yeah, they're all original. I finally bought a little, not a selfie stick, I haven't advanced to that level yet, but I did buy a little tiny tripod for the iPhone. So that's been helping with the self-portraits.
Ooh, I lost everybody.
Yep, there you are. You're still
Okay.
there. Okay, looks like Sarah Mania has a question. So I'm going to find you on the list, Sarah.
Hi, Jessie.
Go ahead.
Hi, so great to see you. I'm really curious about how you develop these technical methods, like figuring out, finding, oh, the spoon works for this, or like the flattening iron works for that, or like how many how many trial, like just if you could talk a little bit about your trial and error, that would be really interesting.
Oh, thank you. So I have to mention that I met Sarah when I was in graduate school. And I say that not to just mention it, but because that's when I first learned about the idea of exhibiting my photographs outside of the frame. I had an internship at the George Eastman House, and I helped install an exhibition of Robert Park Harrison's work. And it blew my mind because they were oversized black and white mural-sized prints, and they were on the outside of a box, essentially, what we call now a wooden canvas, and they were coated in beeswax. I don't know if it was encaustic. I think it might have been beeswax, which is like encaustic, but without the resin. And it like changed everything for me. So in graduate school, I started experimenting with putting my images, mounting them to pieces of wood, and then I experimented with coating them with a variety of different things. Everything from matte medium to weird cold wax things that smelled really bad, and acrylics, and just all kinds of stuff. And the results were pretty good. They were okay. Those were with inkjet prints. So I had to figure out which materials did not run the ink. And then when I moved to Boston, I took an encaustic workshop with Tracy Spadafora. And what was so great about that is I got an introduction to what encaustic really is and what its capabilities are. And she showed me, she showed everybody in the workshop how to do an image transfer. And again, then that blew my mind. I'm sort of easily wowed. And then I realized I wanted to set it up in my studio. And I had her come over for a consultation. So she helped me out figuring out some of the things I wanted to do and how I could do them. When you start looking into encaustic equipment, it's just really expensive. So I looked into what I should have bought, and then you started using sort of things I had around the house, essentially. And I like the spoon instead of a real burnisher, because the burnishers I've seen are kind of small, and the spoon has sort of a bigger surface area. What's really funny though is I've tried different spoons, and this is like my spoon. This is my one really good image transfer spoon. So I have to keep it in a place where I can find it. But so this has been a real organic process of figuring out what works and figuring out how to achieve the look that I want. And I love that it's this unbelievably long, many-step process. There's something I just love about making photography, but doing it with my hands and with mixed media. And I find a lot of the steps of this process very meditative, and it really slows me down.
So cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Okay. We have a question from Kim Alemian. If I can find you on the list. Go ahead, Kim.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi.
How are you? This is a great presentation, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I was just wondering, during your process of transferring the image, is the encaustic warm, or is it fully cold?
Great question. It's warm.
Oh, okay. And
I do gently warm it up after it's been completely flattened. I think that's edited. So yeah, everybody's still there?
Mm-hmm.
It looks good. Hello?
You froze for a minute, but you seem to be back now.
Okay, did you hear the answer?
no.
Oh, I'm
I mean, I
sorry.
heard part of it. You warm it up a little bit after.
You do warm it up a little bit, and that is so it really takes in the toner.
Okay.
And you know, you can't do these from inkjet prints. People have told me you can, but if they're somehow magically able to do it, I'm not. And a lot of that just has to do with the inkjet being a cold, wet process and the toner being a dry, hot process. And that somehow, I mean, there might be some kind of engineer out there that knows the real technique behind this, but the photocopy, it's something about like the polarity and it attaches the toner powder to the paper, and then that's what gets transferred.
Okay, great, thanks.
Wonderful. Looks like Margaret Sheldon had a question. Go ahead, Margaret.
Okay, hi Jessica.
Hi.
First thing I want to say is you seem like the happiest artist I've met in. So good on you. I was curious, do you have any finished pieces here that we can see?
Finished.
Do you have finished pieces around the studio?
Yes, all of the work hanging on the walls are finished. Yeah, so everything on the walls that's hanging, those are all finished pieces. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Got it. I think I was busy looking at your drawers.
Oh, yeah.
So thinking about the drawers, Jessica, I'm going to ask a question. Are you planning an installation with them? I mean, I love seeing how they're all stacked up like that.
Yes, thank
what
you.
your plans are.
Thank you, Erin. So at this point, I actually just did a quick count before this presentation. I have about 100 of them. And as I started collecting more and more, and literally just stacking them up in the studio, I realized that they really do have such an interesting quality as objects. And so when you look at sort of the arrangements that I have them in the space, those are experimentations with installation. And I've been playing with stacking them, and over here, I've been starting to tie some of them together, binding them together. So yeah, I definitely envision an exhibition where I can have the work on the walls and the work in the drawers, and also have the idea that they are three-dimensional objects in addition to being photographic works.
Cool. Looks like we have another question from Susan Murray.
Okay.
Go ahead, or Murray, sorry. Go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, that's fine. Hi, Jessica.
Hi.
Hi. So my question is, if you've done, I love your work, and the black and white is beautiful, but I'm just curious about doing color and if it works as well, and if it's something that you've tried or done.
Yeah, actually, I found that I've done color photocopy transfers in the past. I actually did a project in graduate school where I handmade pieces of paper that were 6 by 8 feet, and then did color transfers onto parts of that paper that were digital captures from Super 8 film that had been transferred to VCR cartridge. Again, a big process, and it looked great. It looked really great. Why these are black and white? I can't remember why I originally decided to do that. I think it comes from just as a photographer starting off in a black and white darkroom. I didn't print my own color until college, and you know, I think it just sort of the imagery, the way that they transfer with the encaustic feels sort of like old crackly photographs sometimes. And so I think those are, you know, I think of that as black and white. I think that probably has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I get it.
Great. We do have a comment from Stephanie Todd Hunter that it would be cool to make a patchwork person out of body parts.
Yeah, I haven't really made a patchwork person. I wish I could show you a piece I have. It's on loan through the FPAC program to WGBH, but they are legs. They're 54 inches tall and about, how wide are they? I don't know, 18 inches wide. And it's my legs up to sort of mid-thigh, and then the tops of my legs are tall evergreen trees. So that's sort of the closest I've gotten to doing kind of a patchwork person. And oh, and then also I have the arm over there with the plane, the airplane. But yeah, I haven't done that. I mean, that's easy enough to do. You should try it.
Yeah. And then before we wrap this up, it looks like Sarah Mania was also asking, and I remember if you discussed this, if you have a vision for the dollar store houses.
Yeah, I definitely want, I'm going to be treating them the same way as the drawers, in the sense of I'll be painting the inside, I'll be layering the encaustic, and then the actual images that go inside them, they will be created during this period of confinement. So I've been kind of thinking about what I see every day, what sort of is part of our lives every day, and how I can capture those things and put them in the houses.
Cool. So we have 2 minutes left. If anybody else has any questions, I'm just going to briefly share my screen so that you can see where you can learn more about Jessica and her work. Welcome to the low-tech land of Zoom. So you can find Jessica online at jessicaburko.com or on Instagram at Jessica Burko.
And on Twitter at Jessica Burko.
Oh, okay. So you got the full complement across. And I will also give my brief pitch that if you've enjoyed this program and want to support future programs, you can visit our website at cambridgeart.org/annual fund to make a donation today to support the things that we're doing during our confinement. Any last questions for Jessica? All right. So I think you can probably see what I like to call the Brady Bunch screen. And I am briefly going to, if I can figure out how to do this, unmute everyone. Well, why don't we just all wave and thank Jessica?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming.
So we'll be back here next Tuesday, same time, visiting Paul Beckingham's studio. Actually, Paul has a show up right now at 13 Forest Gallery that unfortunately no one has been able to see in person. So I hope you'll join us back here at 12:30 on April 28th. Until then, stay well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was great.
Thank you.